Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, I'm speaking to Steven Weigler, and we're talking about this idea of this crossover between being a lawyer and being an entrepreneur. And 10 years as an entrepreneur for any business is a huge sign of success. And we want to learn from Steven today to understand just everything about it. And to start, do you want to introduce yourself and who would be interested in listening to this conversation, please? Hi.
Sure. My name is Steve Weigler, and um, I've had an interesting career, and I put that kind of all together about 10 years ago based on circumstances and founded my own law firm called Emerge Counsel, that's really focused on helping entrepreneurs grow their businesses, um, to be able to be exitable. And what that means is to be able to, even if they don't want to sell the business, to be so well groomed, so well put together that they achieve maximum value at exit.
And that's great because if you want to stick around, that just means you have a successful and profitable business, but you have, like most entrepreneurs, tend to want an exit because they have the next idea they want to follow. So that is a great thing, and they're much more likely to be successful with the funding, etc., once they've been successful with the first one, which is great. So that's awesome. So tell us about what that background is that led you to become to go from, I guess, an entrepreneurial background you have, having started a blue ocean type company in the ed tech space, and then how that led you to how on earth you got to start Emerge Counsel.
Sure. Well, I started my career, I'm getting older, but I started my career as it was a very traditional career. I was a poli-sci major and I wanted to work in government, and I worked on Capitol Hill, and then I became a prosecutor, and then worked for a large corporation, AT&T. So it was always like working within systems until I was probably 39 years old. And so and what I realized is that I really have the personality that in large systems you get compartmentalized unless you're maybe the CEO. But you have a role, you play that role, and it, I found myself to be much more holistic and really like be a problem solver, or someone that had big vision, and wanted to execute on that vision. And it was really difficult to do in large organizations. AT&T got actually bought, and I got an exit package, and as part of the exit package, I was reading through it, and it literally was the size of, I realize this is an antiquated term, but the phone book, I mean, it was huge. And which is really, lawyers don't get that many nice exit packages. That's not usually part of our role to get. But anyway, had a nice exit package. And one thing it said is, hey, if you want to have a big idea, we'll give you, I think it was like in the triple digits, to work on that idea. And I took them up on it. I think I was one of the few, but I had an idea for predictive analytics for school districts to figure out which kids were the most at risk, and to then put together content, curriculum, and professional development, as well as an assessment that could really help school districts kind of compartmentalize and really work on more a deeper dive on why these kids were at risk. And so anyway, it was a tough road. I did that for about 8 years, and had to raise a lot of money. And I but we had great success. I mean, grew it into a multi-million-dollar business. It was business to government, so it was very we knew they were going to pay the invoices, but when they paid, and the predictability of the sales cycle was really difficult. And ultimately we had some real interest with really large educational conglomerates, and almost sold the business to them. But ultimately didn't, but I was able to exit. It wasn't the most pretty of exits, but it was an exit. So at that time, I really had the experience of being working for very large organizations and seeing how they worked, and then really taking kind of a really visionary idea, and it was nothing more than an idea, and really executing to make it a multi-million-dollar business. Well, you guys, I would say that that's not very easy. But anyway, the point is I had a lot of experience. And so it was kind of taking those business skills and those legal skills and saying, how can I, because a lot of times I was working with attorneys and it would be like, hey, here's the forms kind of thing. And I really wasn't getting the why out of it. And so really focusing on how can attorneys or how could I help entrepreneurs really grow their company into being valuable. And the first thing I did was really focused on brand because I think brand and brand protection is the biggest bang for your buck. And so we started as a trademark practice and had a small team and then grew it to be a much more holistic IP and business practice. And that's what the last 10 years has been about.
Okay, so you kind of identified your niche, which totally makes sense. And then how did you balance this idea of helping businesses grow and then also this IP side? So how do you balance those two things to help them to these startups, I guess? Are they usually startups? Are they scale ups? What's your IP normally?
You know, the it's a kind of a combination. It's businesses of any size, but it's when you look at I like to look at it backwards from due diligence backwards. So anyone that's going to sell their company is unless it's a back of a matchbook kind of transaction is but if you're going to sell your company, you're usually going to go through a process like you get a term sheet that says, hey, we're going to buy your company for say $2 million and then or 20 or 200. It's the same process. But you know, it doesn't say after we go through well, we'll say after we go through due diligence, but it's not going to say what that's about. Well, due diligence is this process where they kick all the tires of your business. Say you have a software company, they're going to hire um, software developers to do what's called a load test to make sure that your software can handle 1 million people at the same time, kind of thing. And so you're all these things that you thought of that you didn't think of is gone through in due diligence. So if you look at that going backwards, say you start your company, say you started with a limited liability company, and you're going to take on investors. Well, a limited liability company is kind of difficult to take on investors because it's a creature of contract. It's not they don't have automatic rights like you would have in a corporation. Corporate law gives shareholders automatic rights. And so anyway, so there's like a lot of things that you can start your foundation with wrong. It's not wrong, it's just not meant for your particular play. And so at an early stage company, you're looking at the very basic things. Do you have and one thing that I think the IP focuses on is, do you have a brand? How are consumers going to get to know your good or service? And most people, unless you're selling, I always say, unless you're selling the cure for cancer, which who cares what it's called, right? It's a cure for cancer. In that case, it's a patent play. But it's people have to know this and be able to distinguish your good or service. So I look at IP protection as a thing you have to do at at a very early stage. And so with trademark, it's protecting the brand, it's protecting the logo, it's protecting the name, and you have to make sure that you can clear that brand at a very early stage. So sometimes we get entrepreneurs that you know, they're mid stage, like they're making $2 million, say, in sales a year, and they haven't cleared their brand and they hit an issue. Well, I make a lot of money on that. But the point is that's not in anyone's best interest to have to defend a trademark or against infringement when you're, you know, $2 million of sales into the brand. And sometimes you have to rebrand. So I look at that as a basic foundation stage. Then as the organization grows, they have hiring needs, they have contracts, they have a whole bunch of things that have to be bulletproof in order to meet that stage of due diligence. Governance grows, like when you raise money, they're going to want a seat on the board. How are you going to structure that? How are you going to maintain control of the company? How are you going to you're all of a sudden it's not just one trademark, it's many products, and those need trademarks. And so they kind of all integrate together at various stages of the business. Being a holistic law firm, um, we are involved and maintain relationships with the client to be involved in all stages of growth. And so, again, at the beginning, it's as simple as like looking at the corporate governance and saying, hey, is your business plan, is this the right structure for you? And maybe it's the right structure for you now, but it might not be the right structure for you later. Let's plan that. And then also looking at the basic IP. Again, if it's an invention, we're going to seek patent protection. If it's a everyone has a brand. And if you have certain materials or certain ways of writing things, it's going to involve copyright. And so, I would also say that everyone has trade secrets. So the combination is weaving that together to create your basic wall, your foundation. And same with the governance. And sometimes clients, come to me at the very beginning and we get that structured and build a basic foundation. And then I don't hear from them for, 3-4 years, although we try and stay in touch. And then they're ready for the next stage, And some clients that goes quicker. But it's all to really have an approachable method to, when your company grows, to provide legal services to get you to that exitable type of company. A lot of times when the company comes to me, at exit, which we do M&A, they're a mess. And we have to go, backwards, and that's not productive, and it's anxiety provoking for everyone involved. And sometimes it affects the exit. Trust me, it affects the exit. So that's what we're trying to avoid in our model and approach.
Okay. And yeah, you've written a lot of blogs about this, like niche and exitability, for lack of a better word, and making companies exitable. But then, so that's kind of your niche, which is your unique value proposition, which of course you have all of these startups looking for that as well, or these scale ups looking to be exitable. But then how does that fit in? Because you're part of IR Global, so that's an international community. That's how we got connected. How
Sure.
does that fit in? How did your firm evolve to be involved with international transactions? How does that work into it?
Well, number one, I'm thrilled to be both a member of IR Global and involved in international transactions. Look, a business that evolves is going to generally be in cross borders. And so for example, if you're a goods company and we represent a lot of e-commerce sellers, they order their goods from other countries, primarily China, India, Vietnam. And so you need, and United States law only focuses the jurisdictions, the US, and some long arm statutes, meaning that they can reach out. But generally, you need to have contacts and know attorneys in various places around the world and build meaningful relationships with them. And early on, I'm saying like 3 years into my practice, I realized that I can't, look on the internet for an international attorney or even in my LinkedIn groups, because I'm not going to be able to forge a real and meaningful relationship with them. And so joined IR and travel internationally and built a coalition really of attorneys that I know them very well and are my go-tos around the world for what I call supply chain issues. So when if, for example, you're selling, I don't know, pencil erasers, and you have your brand on them, and it's being manufactured in China, and you put your brand on them, in China, well, your trademark rights you should secure your trademark rights in China.
Oh, yeah.
And same with say the look and feel of a product. That could be design patent, or that can be what's called trade dress, that you have to secure in the place that you're going. Say that ship stops in, 5 countries in Europe before it hits the United States, and you're offloading 2 to 3 cases of, or containers of your product in those places. Well, you should have a EU trademark too. So you look at the distribution and say you're an e-commerce seller and you get an order in the UK. Well, you're selling to the UK and you're going to need protection there. The same holds true with, say you grow to be big enough that you have independent contractor or sales reps in other countries, then you're going to need contracts for those places. And you need to comply. A lot of these countries the regulations are much different than ours. You're going to need regulatory attorneys in those places. So when it comes to international law, I'm really the big picture, and can identify what needs you have. I have contractual relationships with most of these firms around the world, most any country, even ones that are, embargoed. We have relationships, and we've negotiated favorable rates. And as general counsel, again, trying to build your company to be exitable, we can create the necessary relationships without being daunting, it being a daunting task. A lot of times you think international, you're thinking, oh my God, that sounds really like incredibly difficult. And it's like riding, being a marathon runner or something. When you start running a mile, it sounds really difficult. When you do it all the time, and you're trained to do it, it's really road. It's really no big deal for us. And that becomes part of the planning at exit. So that's a prime example. Say you want to be exitable. They do due diligence, and you have all these. You don't have protection in your supply chain. You don't have protection in your distribution chain. You have a really informal independent contractor relationship that invokes, say, I don't know, Polish law. Say you have a Polish, that's not going to be very attractive to any buyer. And those types of things are the kinds of things that we can prophylactically, if that's a word, be able to plan out and really handle as the company grows. And so that takes having a meaningful relationship with the client. And when I say meaningful, it means I'm not calling all the time. I don't, you know, uh, I'm very approachable, but I think a lot of people don't want to talk to their attorneys all the time. But so it's really a balance of being very approachable and not being in your face, or being feeling like they need me all the time. And it's a really interesting. I really like the relationships that I have with my clients. I think they do too, because it's really based on key decisions and touch points, without being like, I'm not in your C-suite. But I know what's going on in your company. I know the players, et cetera. And I really don't charge for that get to know you or continue to know you type of relationship. But I'm also not, I don't need to come to your son's bar mitzvah kind of thing.
Something
It's
so you
really like,
switched from we to I,
mhm.
but there are, as over the last 10 years, your firm has grown, right? So how did you
Yeah, I mean,
think about
we
hiring
haven't,
that have that specific personality niche experience like you do, or maybe augmenting with a different type of experience?
sure. And I mean, I think, well, there's, as far as, we have a small, tight team, and that's intentional. And so especially in our IP practice, a lot of the work will be done by my associate Marie, but and we have like the most outstanding trademark paralegals and general paralegals. And so, but that is something that kind of I learned in corporate, is and also in running my own company, which is the it's very important that I'm involved in almost every client relationship. Like they're gonna I really know what's going on with a vast majority of my clients. And meaning I know what business they're in. I understand their business. I understand the motivators of the client, and I know the major touch points. Again, the responsibility kind of comes with the client. Like I am not going to nudge them if I never hear from them again, to find out what's going on in the company. But as long as they're telling me and take advantage of the kind of the free office hours that I have for my clients to touch base, um, I really am going to be involved. Now, parsing out the work is is another part of it, but I still I'm very involved in both the legal work and the overall picture of the client. How I would scale that is I would really need, and I haven't been able to do it yet, and I'm not sure I want to, is to be able to find a similarly situated um uh senior attorney that really um has understands that value proposition and is able to do that. And I think, we work with a lot of attorneys around the country and around the world. And we contract out, meaning we don't get it like for international work, for example, we don't do that type of, we're not doing the say we're doing a deal with Poland again. We're not doing the Polish work, we're not charging for it, but we have similarly situated attorneys around the world that have the same relationship. The same holds true for things we don't do. We don't do tax, although I know I'd identify tax issues. I'm not a licensed tax attorney. I'm not a licensed CPA. I'm not, and so we find and manage similarly situated people. But that is a tough nut to crack. Like, how do you take your value proposition? How do you take your vision and scale it? It's harder in a service industry, I'd say, than, if you're producing goods, but it's doable. And I think, we've hit this kind of nice equilibrium in the last 10 years of at least being able to um, gauge and are very happy with the results of our client satisfaction. And how we really can tell that is we've had some really successful exits, which is kind of a bittersweet experience for me. Because an exit's an exit, meaning they don't need, we're done. And they're happy. But
That doesn't mean usually they're going to have another product so they can come back at another time.
some of these people are becoming very wealthy, so I'm not sure. Maybe they'll invest in one. So anyway, the point is but that's how we know that our mission's working. Um, yeah, and scale is something that I think I'm gonna have to think about very carefully over the next 10 years.
And when do you think those listening on the call should be contacting you, and how do they contact you?
Sure. So we have free initial consults. It just email me at SWEIGLER at emergecounsel.com, and I'll send you the link, or our website is Emerge Counsel, and I also have a very robust LinkedIn page. But I think I think where we really, it's difficult to help a client when it's at the conceptualization stage, like we might be able to secure a trademark, like because you can reserve one, but and it doesn't hurt to touch base. And I'm glad to provide um some empathetic advice on when I was at that stage and what I didn't spend legal fees on, because I was very judicious, especially being an attorney or having a legal career, on spending money on attorneys. So, but I think, it's worth it for a trademark and just to build a relationship. But I think if someone's listening to this and like, no, we got to get our house in order, kind of middle stage or earlier, like they're like, hey, I'm just about to raise money, or I'm just about to launch. I want to make sure I have the right operating structure, et cetera. All those times are good. And then we're focusing more and more. One thing that's been fun about evolving this practice is, besides my own enterprises, I had a litigation background, so I was used to fighting, but and corporate. but I never had a lot of experience in helping companies exit. And over the last 10 years, we're doing a lot of deals. And so anyone that's thinking about like best positioning, looking at a company before you're about to, or you got a term sheet, how are we going to get through due diligence? How are we going to get best terms in acquisition? It's an excellent time. And so we're finding more and more later stage companies that are kind of on due diligence is always triage. And so kind of in that ready to get ready for triage stage and negotiating best terms it's an excellent time. So I guess that's what's been fun over the last 10 years. I never thought that it would exactly turn out like this, but it's really helping entrepreneurial organizations at any stage.
And it's always good to have a conversation if you're not sure, because you are very ethically open to that conversation, not, okay, how do I charge you right away? Let's see what fits and let's work together throughout your journey. So that's fantastic. And thank you so much. And here's to another 10 years or a highly profitable exit.
Thanks so much.